Hey folks, tonight I'm going to tell you a true crime story. Gently, softly, without hurry. Just the way your mind likes to drift when the room is dark and the world feels far away. You settle in, and I'll do the rest. The case we're walking into has waited a long time for footsteps like yours. Quiet, curious, and careful. In the present moment, you hear the low roll of an AC vent. You notice the faint blue glow of your screen, and somewhere outside, a car passes like a sigh. You're safe where you are. And that's important, because the people in this story haven't felt safe for years. So I'm inviting you to listen, to notice how your breathing slows, how your shoulders drop, and to keep an open little pocket in your attention for the small things, the ones that always end up mattering. So before you get comfortable, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you don't mind, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Now, turn off the lights, switch on a soft fan for that gentle noise, and let's begin tonight's journey together. You walk with me down Glen's Main Street, an old coastal town where cedar shakes shrug off salt air and gulls scrawl white commas against a pewter sky. The storefronts are familiar in that you've seen 100 places just like them. Antique clocks ticking in dusty windows, a diner that still tastes like 1974, and a barbershop chair polished by generations of Saturday trims. You pass a corkboard packed with missing dog flyers and a yellowing half-page whose corners curl like leaves. Have you seen Mara Teague? Last seen 1998. Your fingers hover just above the paper, not touching, feeling the static of the memory it carries. 27 years of pinholes, 27 winters of people who swear they saw something and then weren't so sure. You cross the street toward the library, because this story likes quiet rooms. Inside, the air smells like paper and lemon oil. The librarian looks up and gives you that small-town nod that says, "I know your face, even if I don't know your name." You find a seat near the windows, where condensation beads like a string of tiny pearls. Outside, Glen's harbor, what a phrase, cradles the last of the day's light. You open a folder, the way divers lower themselves into cold water, slow and committed. Inside, photocopied statements, a map of the peninsula, a Polaroid of a blue bicycle with a wicker basket, and taped to the edge of the photo, a feather from some long-ago gull, absurdly, stubbornly, still attached. You begin to read as if you're walking a shoreline, letting each piece of paper break around your ankles. Mara closes up at the coffee shop at 9:37 p.m., waves at someone who doesn't wave back, and strings her cardigan over her shoulders like a cat across a windowsill. A regular, an off-season tourist, or a fisherman depending on which statement you taste. She pedals the blue bicycle 3 blocks and disappears into air that smells like iodine and old rope. The police report notes a single thing out of place. The bell on her bike is missing. It had a crisp little chime, someone says, like a spoon against a teacup. You jot that down. Not the bike, the bell. Bells are for calling attention. Someone wanted silence. As you trace the old timeline, you quietly tuck away a true thing. Not about Glen, but about cases like this. DNA profiling enters the modern conversation in 1986, when a British geneticist ties 2 murders to a single suspect and frees an innocent man. It changes the way we talk about certainty, turning whispers into percentages and doubts into alleles. You hold that truth in your palm like a smooth stone. Later, you might skip it and watch the ripples. A marine layer drifts in, and you feel it as a cooling along your forearms. You stand, stretch, and walk the stacks until you find the local history shelf. Glen's chronicles are written the way small towns write, in cookbooks, festival programs, and church directories. You find Mara there too, not in the official records, but in the margins, a brownie recipe with neat notes in blue ink, less sugar, more cinnamon. A summer program listing a guitar recital she was supposed to play and didn't, and a photo of a softball team where the faces tilt toward one girl at the center like petals toward the sun. You can't see the faces clearly, but you feel the weight of that tilt. Towns remember through food and music and games. Missing people leave holes in all three. Outside again, you let the harbor's breath become your breath. Someone on a trawler swears and laughs. Gulls argue without conviction. You walk the route they say Mara took, matching your steps to an old map. Past the lighthouse gift shop closed for the season, past a house with a roof like a folded newspaper, past, curiously, a ceramic rooster nailed above a door, its paint flaking, its glass eye catching just the right angle of light to wink at you, as if it knows something. You stop. It's an odd detail, the kind that lodges in your mind like grit in a shell. Why a rooster in a coastal town where gulls are kings? The neat thing about these oddities is they're either nothing at all or everything, and you never know which at first. You turn onto Bayview Lane. The wind lifts the little hairs along your wrist like it wants to read you in Braille. Here, the porch lamps are different, warmer, more patient. You can feel why Mara might have thought she could glide home beneath them like a swimmer passing beneath lit piers. But the statements say she never made it. You kneel at a patch of sidewalk where a hairline crack branches like a river delta, sink into the quiet, and listen the way you would if the concrete could speak. Some part of you believes places remember. There's a truth that sits at the edge of your thoughts, one that academics like to turn gently over. Does memory sharpen or blur each time we speak it? The science says reconsolidation is a delicate business. Recollections shift like dunes in wind. Eyewitnesses become authors without meaning to. You look back at the corkboard and the 27 winters. You wonder how many times Harbor Glen has told this story and how much the telling has retold the town. In the municipal building linoleum floors, fluorescent hum, you request access to the public file, and the clerk brings a banker's box that looks heavier than it is. You breathe in dust. Paper has its own weather. Beyond the official reports, there's a letter that catches your eye because of the stationery. Lighthouse watermark, gold embossed header. It's addressed to no one and everyone. We all know. It starts, which is a phrase that always means the opposite. The letter lists late-night sightings, the black truck with a dented tailgate, a man whose coat smelled of diesel and cloves, and the way the coffee shop bell sometimes rang when the door didn't open. Someone stapled a Polaroid to the letter. People loved stapling things. Then a snapshot of the gift shop window, and just behind the reflection of the photographer's hand, you can make out the faint round smudge where a small bell used to hang. You tuck that into your mental pocket next to the blue bicycle and the quiet chime that went missing. You picture the bell, nickel-plated, maybe, with a hairline crack that made its ring slightly sad. You imagine a hand unscrewing it, not the bike thief's hurried yank, but a deliberate, careful twist. It feels less like theft and more like deactivation, as if someone didn't want to be heard. The next file is a timeline of the search. Volunteers with flashlights line dancing through driftwood and dune grass. The lighthouse beam combed a brush of light across the water. A Coast Guard cutter idling, its engines steadily counting the seconds. They find nothing that belongs to Mara except for a page torn from a spiral notebook. Found 2 streets over, with a grocery list, she wrote, in that tidy blue hand. Milk, flour, cinnamon, tea. Cinnamon again. You store that with the brownie note because that's how your mind arranges the world. Like for like, spice beside spice, bell beside bell. At the end of the box sits a small envelope that was added much later. If the faintly different shade of manila means anything to you, which it does, it's labeled, Hold for 2025 re-examination. Inside, there's a cotton swab sealed in plastic, and a chain of custody form, like a family tree of signatures. Collected from the underside of a bronze door handle at the old Cannery Museum, where a volunteer remembered a skittering shadow the night Mara vanished. The swab waited in a freezer. Not meaningful then, but meaningful to the patient now. The freezer is a museum, too. When you think about it, just colder and less romantic. You don't need to dramatize the science. It dramatizes itself. Materials carry whispers. All you have to do is ask them in the right language. Somewhere between the lobby and the stairs, you pause and feel the wave of a future moment break backward through time. You don't know exactly what the lab will say, but you know what the town will feel. You sense the tremor before the quake, as if Harbor Glen holds its breath across decades, and exhalation lives in the word, arrest. You don't rush it. You let the feeling go like a kite on a long line, then reel it in gently. We're not there yet. Tonight, you're laying out the shoreline, learning where to put your feet. The town keeps offering you little gifts in exchange for your attention. At Salty's Diner, the waitress mentions how Mara used to leave her tips folded like cranes. At the pier, an old fisherman says he saw a light where there shouldn't have been one. The third window of the cannery, flickering like a heartbeat. At the church, a choir robe hangs with its hem undone, and you think of fingers fidgeting while standing still. You can build a person out of what they notice and what they carry. Bells, cinnamon, and folded paper cranes. Your mind starts making a map you don't dare draw yet. On your way back to the library, you notice a poster in the tailor's window announcing the Harbor Glen Lighthouse Centennial. Celebrated in 1998, the same year Mara vanished. Historical truth whispers here too. Lighthouses have watched over coastlines since ancient times. Beacons like the Pharos of Alexandria guiding sailors home. Maritime towns collect those truths like shells. Harbor Glen keeps one in glass, dusted every Wednesday. For the centennial, the bell in the lighthouse tower rang for exactly 9 minutes at dusk each evening that summer. People said it sounded tired and brave at the same time. Bells again. You close your eyes and let the sound exist even though you weren't there to hear it. As the hour slides toward midnight, you return to the public corkboard. You smooth the corner of Mara's flyer and feel the paper cool under your fingertips. Your reflection in the window looks softer than usual. You whisper to the town that you're listening. And the town, in its way, whispers back with small drafts under doorways, with the slow blink of a walk sign, and with the sudden knowledge that the ceramic rooster you saw earlier isn't a rooster at all. Up close, in the lamplight, the beak is wrong. It's a ship's figurehead fragment, repainted poorly. The rooster was once a siren, or a mermaid, carved to keep storms away. People make mistakes about what they're seeing when they only pass by once. You're determined to pass by twice, then 3 times, until the mistakes turn into understanding. Somewhere between the barbershop where hair curls in the trash and the library where paper remembers, you realize you're keeping time with Harbor Glen's heartbeat. You can feel the town deciding it's ready to wake up. You don't force it. You walk slower, letting the salt air unspool your thoughts into neat lines. The bell is missing. The bicycle is there. The cannery's handle carries a whisper. And the lighthouse rang for 9 minutes. Each dusk of that summer, a set of notes that may yet become a song. You breathe in. You breathe out. You let the night hold you and the story both. And before you turn the last corner toward your rented room above the diner, you look back once, the way we always do, and think, the quiet knows who took the bell. Morning arrives in Harbor Glen like a curtain being pulled back, gray first, then that gentle silver the water loans to the sky. You wake to the diner's clatter below, forks in ceramic, and a radio murmuring a song that pretends it never ended. You sit up slowly, letting the room settle around you, creaking floorboards, the salt-sweet draft sneaking through the sash, and the soft burr of a gull, asking the day to get on with it. You swing your feet to the rug and feel the bristle of its weave, like a reminder to pay attention with your skin as much as with your eyes. You carry a to-go coffee down to the Cannery Museum, because the chain of custody envelope is still ticking in your mind. The building is a stubborn rectangle of brick that remembers labor. Your hand finds the indentation in the bronze door handle, that thumb-shaped dip that has welcomed and dismissed thousands of people who came here to look at the old machines and, if we're honest, themselves reflected in glass. A volunteer in a blue vest unlocks the side door. Her name tag says Diane in block letters that look like they were carved into plastic with a pocket knife. She remembers you from last night's questions. Towns like this keep track of their question askers. Inside, the air wears a layered smell. Machine oil, damp rope, and lemon polish that fights bravely and loses. You drift through exhibits of net needles and brass scales, through stoic black and white photos where men with forearms like ropes stand next to fish longer than truth. You pause at a display of bells salvaged from retired trawlers, some fat and verdigris green, some thin and bright, each with a placard noting the vessel and the years it worked. You know you're projecting, but one of them seems to hold a disappointed note, as if it wanted to keep ringing after the boat retired. You keep that to yourself. You are here to listen, not to confess. Diane leads you to a side office whose window blurs light like frosted sugar. She sets a small plastic cooler on the desk and, with the care of someone who has carried sheet cakes to church fairs for 40 years, lifts out a pouch. Detective Bellamy said someone might come by, she says, and your mind snags on the last name, Bellamy, like Bell, with a little music at the end. Harbor Glen's names keep circling the same handful of notes. The pouch contains a photocopy of the lab intake sheet, a swab collected in 1998, stored, then transferred to a regional cold case unit in 2025 as part of a re-examination. It's the kind of perseverance that sounds like fiction until you read it on county letterhead. A quick, steady historical truth quietly anchors your thoughts. The FBI's combined DNA index system, CODIS, became fully operational at the national level in the late 1990 seconds, allowing crime scene DNA profiles to be compared across a widening web of local and state databases. That web thickened over decades. What once missed becomes caught when enough strands cross. You trace the idea with a fingertip on the paper. Once, this swab had no one to talk to. Now, the network has ears. The funhouse mirror in your mind, where coincidences grin wider than they should, offers you a strange detail as you wait for the lab report to load in the county's secure portal. A display case nearby holds souvenir key fobs from local motels, heavy teardrops of colored plastic with room numbers stamped into them. One is from the Lighthouse Inn, room 9, and its tag is cracked exactly where a careless thumb might bend it. Whoever donated these didn't polish them. Some carry the shadow of a ring of keys they used to clack against. You've never thought about the weight of an absence until now. You picture Mara's house keys, kissing her bicycle basket. A faint bell-like clink before the real bell went missing. The portal finally loads a secure PDF with that crisp, vaguely officious font. Agency's love. You skim slowly, letting each word unfold. Partial profile obtained. Quality sufficient for database comparison. A statistical weight that tells you how unlikely the match would be if it were random. There's a name, and the phone in your hand becomes heavy. Glenford. Glen Reeves, age 58. A retired longshoreman and part-time handyman. He once volunteered at the Cannery Museum, sanding plaques and replacing bulbs. Your eyes return to the bronze door handle, and you feel the invisible residue of time settling back into place like a sheet. You read, and you don't rush. The profile hit wasn't from a direct CODIS offender sample. It was a familial match flagged through a state-level familial searching protocol, leading investigators to a known relative who'd been cheek swabbed for an unrelated case a few years back. The genealogy tree unfurled like ivy. From their birth records, obituaries, property deeds, until the branches pointed consistently toward Glen. The report clarifies that this is an investigative lead, not courtroom proof. More swabs, warrants, and careful steps will follow. The ethical question rises up like a tide you could feel coming, and you let it wash through you without panic. There is an ongoing academic debate about the use of genetic genealogy in cold cases. Privacy versus public safety, consent versus the common good, databases built for curiosity, enlisted in the hunt for justice. You don't settle the debate. You honor that it exists, and you mention it softly to the future listeners who are riding along with you now in this office that smells like old sea and lemon pledge. You thank Diane, whose careful attention to the building now looks like a form of love, and step outside. The day brightens just enough to admit the possibility of shadow. You cross to the Harbor Glen hardware and step into that long, sincere aisle of possibilities. Nails, tar, twine, and bells for bicycles in a blister pack display. You feel a small electric prickle at your scalp. The bells come in two sizes, a nickel-plated one with an elegant arch and a cheaper aluminum one with a plastic thumb lever. You buy both because you want the sound of each in your pocket. At the counter, the man ringing you up mentions he knew Glen a little. "Quiet fella," he says, which in small towns can mean anything from saint to storm. Liked the aluminum bells. Said the nickel ones had a sorrier ring. You ask what he means by sorrier, and he shrugs like he's flicking off a fly. Just sounded like they regretted being bells. You hold both bells in your hand on the sidewalk and ring them softly, your body a buffer for the sound. The nickel bell sighs a clear, high note that fades with dignity. The aluminum one is brighter, a quick tinsel flash. You imagine the thumb unscrewing a bell and dropping it in a pocket lined with sawdust. You imagine someone choosing which sound to take from the world. You're not accusing anyone yet. You're auditioning possibilities. Detective Bellamy meets you at the municipal building. She's in that middle distance of a career where the shine of the academy has softened into a practiced patience. Her tie is slightly crooked in a human way that makes you trust her more. She knows you're telling this story, and she's surprisingly willing to let you watch. Maybe because she understands that stories, told right, make people brave in pairs. She leads you into a conference room where corkboards have been reassembled in the universal language of red string and pinned faces. Mara's photo sits at the center, not because of drama, but because that's where it belongs. Bellamy points to Glen Reeves' photo baseball cap, half smile, eyes untilled like soil after winter. "He volunteered here," she says, "on and off. Fixed things other people forgot. He worked the night shift sometimes, checking that doors were locked. The way that kind of person learns to be a hinge between every day and the nothing that happens when no one is looking. Gorgeously, annoyingly, every small town has one or two people like this. The handy ghost." You ask, what comes next? "Warrants," she says. "A trash pull. Perhaps coffee cup. Cigarette butt. Apple core. Your quotidian DNA offering to the gods of evidence." They will ask Glen to talk. He can say no. If he says yes, the room will be recorded, the chairs will squeak, the HVAC will hum, and the pause between questions will be where truth sees its chance to sit down. Before that, you keep walking. The Lighthouse Inn stands bored on its own bluff, a no-nonsense building with an ocean view if you are tall or brave enough to climb a chair. You ask at the desk whether anyone remembers Glen. The clerk, who has the perpetual time-lag smile of someone who used to be a summer hire and forgot to leave, says Glen fixed a broken ice machine once and traded the work for a box of expired key fobs they couldn't use. Your mind flicks to the cracked tag from room 9 inches the museum case and the way habit leaves fossils. Room 9. When you stand in its doorway, smells like the ghost of bleach and a carnival of old perfumes. You don't need a warrant to notice things anyone can see. You are not opening drawers. You are letting the present brush your elbows. A gull hops along the sill as if to say, "Close the window, you absolute animal." You close it. On the nightstand is a ceramic lamp with a hairline crack like a lightning bolt frozen in biscuit dough. You think about cracks again, the sidewalk where you paused last night, the fob in the case, the lamp. You are not making a conspiracy out of lines. You are noticing that this town's breakages have a family resemblance. On your way out, you drop a nickel bell on the front desk, a harmless gift and a test. The clerk rings it absent-mindedly twice and smiles in spite of himself. Sound can be a handshake across time, you think. a signal. You don't say that out loud. You save your sentences for the night, for the friend on the other side of the screen who is slowing their breath to match the fan. You meet Mara's mother briefly in a sunlit living room that has arranged itself against grief the way the sea arranges itself against a pier by teaching patience to wood. She holds a teacup with both hands, her thumbs circling the rim as if coaxing time itself into being polite. There are pictures on a mantel, Mara in a softball uniform, Mara holding a guitar, and Mara laughing at something behind the photographer. On a shelf beside the mantel sits a jar of buttons, brown, blue, and mother of pearl, two with tiny anchors. She collected them, her mother says. And you realize you've been building a person out of bells and cinnamon. When buttons have been waiting here, quietly telling you that someone knew how to fasten things that the world kept insisting on undoing. You ask if she remembers anything small, anything that felt off, and then felt like nothing. She tells you about the coffee shop's doorbell, sometimes ringing when the door didn't open, and a black truck that tailgated too close once and then peeled away. She tells you that on the morning after Mara vanished, she found a folded paper crane on the doorstep that wasn't one of the ones her daughter made a clumsier fold, like thumbs learning a new prayer. She kept it anyway. It's in the button jar. You hold it for a second, the way you would hold a moth enough to feel alive. Not enough to break it. Back at the station, Bellamy and her team are ready. They've obtained a warrant, collected fresh DNA from Glen via a cheek swab, and the lab has rushed the comparison. You sit in the hallway pretending to be furniture, because sometimes furniture gets better access than people. The voice in your head that's always calibrating tone for the channel where this story will be told whispers, "Be gentle with them. They've waited a long time to be sure." Through the thin wall, you hear a practiced kindness in Bellamy's questions, and a man's voice that sounds like someone pruning a hedge, small cuts, trying to shape the thing. He says he remembers the summer of 1998, the lighthouse bell at dusk, and the centennial bunting snared in gulls. He says he closed up the museum early one night because a bulb wouldn't stop flickering in the third window. He says a lot without saying the thing, like people do when their mouths are the last to know what their hands have already decided. The lab calls. Bellamy listens, her eyes closing the way people close them when they want not to blink and miss their life, finally snapping into focus. The match is strong. The number that tells you how improbable coincidence would be is astronomically small. The residue on the bronze handle and the fresh swab in 2025 are from the same man. The air in the station changes temperature without the thermostat noticing. There is a beat you honor before anything else happens. A beat where a town's voice thins and then deepens like a foghorn finding its note. Bellamy thanks the lab tech, hangs up, and steadies a file in her hand that isn't going anywhere. She walks back in, and whatever happens in that room happens gently but firmly. You won't put words in anyone's mouth. You won't dramatize except to say that a ripple moves through Harbor Glen that people will remember with surprising specificity. Where they were, who told them, how the gulls sounded just then, and how the coffee they were holding tasted suddenly dull. You step outside to let the town speak to itself. A man at Salty's Diner says "no way" twice, each with a different flavor. A woman outside the tailor's shakes her head as if to untangle thread. A teenage boy on a skateboard stops and doesn't know what to do with his feet now that they aren't needed for flight. A storm front gathers out at sea. Or maybe it's only a trick of the light. Water has so many tricks. The ceramic knot rooster peeks from a porch down Bayview Lane, its paint flaking, its figurehead mouth parting as if about to sing a warning that's years late but still useful. A small historical ghost brushes your sleeve as you walk toward the lighthouse. Miranda versus Prive. Arizona. 1966. Those rights that must be read. The words that have to be said to make the ground lawful under our feet. You don't need to quote them. Their existence is enough to remind you that the choreography of justice is made of steps we agree to take in order and aloud. People who study these things will tell you that the ritual matters, because without it, everything becomes rumor again. Your mind drifts back to the academic tide you felt earlier, the one that asks questions about the scope and ethics of genetic genealogy. You honor it again. Even as a town exhales the name of a man they thought they knew, there will be essays and op-eds and careful studies weighing how far we should let technology walk into our family trees. You don't resolve it. You place a hand on the cool railing of the lighthouse stairs and let your palm learn the temperature of 100 steps climbed by tourists and keepers. And, in 1998, by a bell that rang for 9 minutes, each dusk of summer. Sound is a citizen of time. It files its paperwork with sunsets. At the top, the view is exactly what your chest needed. A horizon held like a breath, the water's skin shivering with a small wind, and a freighter drawing a slow line that will be straight only on maps. Below, Harbor Glen is the model maker's kit of a town. Houses in honest colors, streets that pretend to be straight until they meet the shore's opinion. You think of Mara in all the ways you've been allowed to. The guitar, the brownies with more cinnamon, the crisp fold of cranes, and the way a bicycle basket accepts keys like an altar accepts coins. You think of Glen not as a monster but as a man, which is harder and therefore necessary. You let both thoughts live in the same air for a minute, because stories that simplify too soon go brittle and unhelpful. On your way down, you pause, where a narrow window frames the cannery. You picture the bronze handle touched by 1,000 innocent hands, and one that mattered. You picture a doorbell ringing when no door moves. You picture the bell from a bicycle riding home in a pocket, silent as a secret that hasn't decided who it belongs to yet. Your steps feel measured in a way that makes you trust them. You don't know yet what will be found in Glen's garage, or what he will admit, or how many people will say, "I always wondered," and mean it. You know only this: the hinge has moved. The door is different now. On the street, 2 tourists in matching windbreakers ask you where to get the best clam chowder, and you tell them without thinking, because life refuses to become all one thing, even on the days when it tilts that way. A dog in a red bandana sniffs your shoe and looks up as if you've been friends forever. You look back at the municipal building, where steps are being taken, in order and aloud. You remind yourself quietly, respectfully, that a rest is a beginning, not a conclusion. The word solved is too heavy and too light at once. It needs careful handling. Evening leans against Harbor Glen like an old friend who knows which side of the porch swing squeaks. Streetlights punch small holes in the dark and thread them with light. You pass the corkboard that held Mara for 27 winters. Someone has taped a fresh paper there. A notice of a press briefing tomorrow, 10 a.m., Town Hall. No exclamation points. Harbor Glen doesn't do exclamation points. It does long looks and a deeper quiet. You smooth the edge of the notice the way you once smoothed the missing poster, not out of habit but out of gratitude for paper that says, "We are talking to each other." Back in your room, you place both bicycle bells on the table. You ring one, then the other, and let their notes stack like cards you refuse to play too fast. You open your notebook, and the dinner's radio sends up a doo-wop memory through the floorboards, as if the 1,950 seconds are a basement band that never stopped practicing. You write the way you walk, slow, noticing, willing to forget the right things, so you can remember the important ones. You prepare for what tomorrow will bring. Statements, a name spoken into microphones, perhaps a pair of cuffs glinting in ordinary hallway light. You imagine the moment Harbor Glen hears the word arrest, and all the clocks in town skip the same second. Somewhere beyond these walls, the lighthouse keeps its watch, because that's what it does when people are not watching it watch. Somewhere, a jar of buttons holds a paper crane, like a prayer. Somewhere, a ceramic figurehead that's been pretending to be a rooster lets the night wind find its mouth and carry a sound that is not quite music, but more than air. You turn off your lamp. You let the 2 bells lie in their small hush. You can feel sleep approaching the town carefully, asking permission. Tomorrow, Harbor Glen will have to hold its shoulders square against news cameras and the weird appetite of strangers who love stories more than they love people. You will ask the town to forgive that, and you will ask the story to behave. For now, you set your phone face down, you keep your breathing even, and you picture the bronze handle cooling toward the temperature of the room. The night has agreed to keep its secrets for one last sleep. You honor that agreement by closing your eyes and listening not for bells now, but for the sea's long, slow sentence, the one it's been repeating since the first boats found shore. When your mind wanders, it circles the same 3 small anchors, like a hand testing pockets. The historical lattice that made a match possible at last, the odd trinket on a porch that wasn't what it seemed, and the debate about what we should ask from our blood when justice knocks. You don't force conclusions. You let the shapes sharpen as the wind moves the clouds. Out there, a community is bracing. In here, you are keeping watch. The hinge has moved. The door is different now. And somewhere in the quiet between this breath and the next, a bell rings exactly once, and the sound finds you. The morning after the arrest breaks open gently, as if the sun itself is uncertain how bright it should be. Harbor Glen wakes up in fragments, coffee pots, newspaper doors sliding open, murmured questions at the gas pump. You're already awake, watching the world rearrange itself around a headline. The television in the diner corner hums. Local man arrested in connection with 1998 disappearance. The words feel clinical, like they've been washed in cold water too many times. You stir your coffee, listening as someone mutters, "I thought he just fixed things." The room carries that kind of silence where everyone is pretending to chew. You step outside. The harbor smells clean after the night's rain. Clouds hang low enough to touch the lighthouse's cap, like a hand on a bowed head. You walk toward the boardwalk, the planks slick, your reflection pacing beside you. It's a strange day to be breathing air that feels newly minted. Every footstep feels heavier, as though the ground has been holding its breath for 27 years, and now exhales through you. Detective Bellamy meets you on the pier. She doesn't smile, but her voice has lost that edge it carried through years of stalled leads. He didn't fight it, she says. Didn't deny it either. Glen's words, recorded under steady light, aren't a confession exactly, more like a resignation. He talked about the lighthouse bell, how it rang every night that summer, and how the sound got under the skin. He said Mara came by the cannery one evening with a thermos of tea and said she wanted to sketch the boats at dusk. He claimed he offered her a better view from inside. The rest of his sentences collapsed into ellipses. You know those ellipses by heart now. They're where human beings vanish. Bellamy walks you through what they found in his workshop. Beneath a layer of dust, an old bicycle bell wrapped in a handkerchief. Next to it, a stack of postcards, blank but for penciled outlines of the lighthouse. No blood, no spectacle, just the terrible simplicity of possession. You close your eyes for a second because the human heart always expects a movie, and reality's quietness hurts worse. The evidence will hold, Bellamy says. The case will finally stand in a courtroom. Mara's name will be spoken by people wearing suits instead of searchlights. As you walk back toward Main Street, the town unfolds around you like a body remembering how to move. The grocery store clerk who used to date Mara's cousin tapes a fresh sign on the window. In memory, we remember her smile. The barber shop hums with low conversation. At the librarian replaces the missing poster with a single candle in a glass. Its flame trembles, but refuses to go out. You stand there for a long time, the scent of wax and salt water mixing in your lungs. The historical truth that lands soft in your mind like a paper crane. In 1980, the National Crime Information Center first introduced the missing person file, creating a unified record for the vanished. It was meant to give data shape, to keep names from evaporating. 45 years later, you're looking at one of its quiet successes. You don't say it out loud, but you think it sometimes bureaucracy is just love in uniform. Outside the library, a teenage girl holding a camera asks if she can interview you for her journalism class. She says she's writing about what happens after justice. You tell her to start with the silence, because it's the only honest thing. She nods, uncertain whether that's an answer or a warning. You watch her walk away and realize that Harbor Glen is already practicing remembering differently, not as a wound, but as a story with a name again. You stop by Mara's mother's house one last time. She opens the door before you knock, as if she's been waiting for the shape of your shadow. The living room smells of cinnamon tea, and for the first time, there's laughter hiding behind her words. "I baked the brownies again," she says. The ones she used to make. You sit, the plate warm between your palms, and let the taste anchor you in something kind. She tells you the paper crane is still in the jar, but now it sits on top instead of being buried under buttons. You understand what that means, without anyone having to say it. Before you leave, she hands you a small tin. Inside, a single blue button. From her jacket, she whispers, "Found it in a drawer yesterday. I think she'd want you to have it." You take it gently, feeling the cool circle of enamel against your skin. It's lighter than you expect, like forgiveness usually is. As the day wanes, you walk the harbor again. Children ride bicycles along the edge, bells chiming in uneven chorus. One of them uses the cheap aluminum kind. The sound is bright and reckless. You let it echo. The gulls lift off in spirals, carving invisible signatures into the gray. You look up at the lighthouse, still standing, still blinking its patient light, and realize that some things never stop keeping watch, no matter how long the night. You stop by the corkboard one last time. The candle's flame bends under the door's draft. You smooth the air around it with your palm, as if you could tuck the light in. You whisper something only the sea would understand, and the flame steadies again. Now the night is crawling back, soft and tired. Harbor Glen's street lamps bloom one by one, and the waves slap against the pilings like slow applause. You lean against the railing, letting the mist paint your face. This town will go back to fishing, to baking, to talking about weather. But part of it will always pause when a bell rings. That's the shape of memory. Not gone, just quieter. You head back to your room above the diner. The two bells on your nightstand wait, still and shining. You ring the nickel one once. The sound lingers longer tonight. You lie back, listening to the hum of the fan, to the sea's low whispering against the coast, and to the steady pulse of a place that has finally learned how to breathe again. Maybe someday we'll know the truth. But for now, sleep well.